Did you know that every time I start a craft and cook show, I say, "Hi everyone." I didn't realize that until I went back over the previous 7 shows on the weekend to check where we had filmed things, what I'd been wearing, how long my hair has got during COVID. So today I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say welcome to the 8th Craft and Cook Show, and I hope you are all well. This week is going to be a chill week because it's all hand sewing, and in fact Kate and I have just done a dash to the studio and filmed the little promo video for the Great Australian Craft Show for the Christmas edition, and we've run around a lot this morning, so this is kind of calm with caffeine, but calm, and we're going to have a lovely time just going back and revisiting the old English paper piecing technique today. First of all, I did want to say, look after yourself when you're doing a lot of hand sewing. It's probably a bit late this year, but I know a lot of us have been hunched over sewing tables, over quilting, over sewing machines. So it's really important to look after your posture as well. And one thing, or 2 things actually, I have done is got into the habit of getting my shoulders in the right spot. So if you haven't done this before, or you have forgotten to do it, all you need to do is put your arms out straight and twist your palms upwards and drop your arms down. And all of a sudden you'll find your shoulders all go back and you'll be sitting upright. And it might make you a little bit conscious of what else is going on down here, but it's really important to keep your shoulders back, because when things start to tighten up here, it's actually because things aren't sitting right at the back. And the other thing that I have done is gone and changed my lens prescription, because I was wearing bifolds. So I was doing this and I'd look straight up and then I'd look down. So now I've got transition ones. So I have to sit up straight to be able to see the focused point for my work up close. So it does changes a little bit of my posture, and I'm hoping it's going to hold me in good stead for a lot more sewing over the coming summer as well. So with all that in mind, I'm now very conscious I'll have to sit as upright as possible for the show today, but I want to go back and revisit, as I said, EPP, or English paper piecing. And we all know the very traditional English paper piecing involves hexagons. So I thought I'd bring this and show you. This is just a little old one of mine that's got my traditional hexagon flowers. This was a little quilt I made a little while after I started having Chandler's Cottage as a serious business, if you like, because once you have one, you don't think about having a stash at home as much anymore. My whole personal stash just takes up 2 little baskets in my studio. So what I did, I cleaned a lot of stuff out, but I couldn't part with these. So I took all my little kind of 1980s little florals and popped them all into this little wall hanging quilt. And hexagons are the traditional way to do it, but I'm so excited, and I've been so excited in the last couple of years to see people have really taken a quantum leap in the different shapes that they're using for paper piecing. The rain has stopped, so you can't hear that on the roof, but Miss Ginny is here around my legs, so that's the little bell that you can hear. So if we want to step aside from just having hexagons, then there is a few more little different things that happen. Some of them are challenges, but some of them are really exciting, and they create lots of different effects. So the first one that I want to show you today is switching from having hexagons, which are 6-sided, and we're going to go to pentagons, which are, she's sitting on the white quilt now, don't you love it? We're going to switch to pentagons that have 5 sides. So I've got some of these here, you can see that little shape. So these are really different. A lot of us, without realizing it, we're using these to make little balls and things for our babies, so that we put little rattle or the bell inside, because you can get a pentagon to bring you up into a really nice ball shape. Also for Christmas decorations, but we're going to use them flat, and what happens is this. So this, if you haven't seen it before, is the first in the series of my paper doily club designs. So this is just one great big, if you like, circular or rotating, radiating out design using pentagons. And what you can see happens is you end up with little gaps in between. So it really does come up like a paper doily when you've been making one. So when you switch over to different shapes, different things are going to happen. I want to use one of these little pentagons as well, just to revisit paper piecing as a one-off, and then we can have a look at some different shapes. So I've got here on my knee a piece of Melba as well. Now this is not the one that the cushion has come from. It came from the border stripe, but this project panel design would work equally well. It has a 24-inch repeat, so if I do want to make multiples of the one little fussy cut pentagon, I will need to take that into consideration. Sometimes when you buy a large print like this, you will find the same motifs are repeated within a 24-inch repeat, but you do have to watch yourself with the grain of the fabric, because sometimes if it hasn't been re-straightened and bolted straight and really well, there can be a slight gradient in the way that the threads come across the bolt, and if that happens, some of the designs might be a little bit askew, or they will sit differently from one side of the bolt to the other. So my little trick for that is always when you're cutting from one particular design piece, always start cutting the same piece you want all down one side of the bolt, and then for the next one work your way across. So if I want a piece out of this waratah and then I want more the same, I will cut them all from this side of the selvage. I won't take one from the other side of the bolt, because they could sit just that little bit differently, and if you're really particular about fussy cutting and getting them particularly the same, then you'll need to be a bit careful with that. Okay, so one thing, if I'm cutting from a fabric, the first thing I love to do for fussy cutting is have a look at the back and hope that enough of the pattern is showing on the back so that I don't have to draw it onto the front first and then turn it over. So today I just really want to revisit our paper piecing. Let's choose one of these little grevillea motifs here, and I'm just going to use a pencil to draw this on. So if I was doing a lot of these and I wanted them exactly the same, then what I would do is do a clear template of the pentagon so that I could lay it over the design and see exactly where it was going to lie, and then I would mark my template over a little part of the motif so I could line it up with the next one so I know it's exactly in the right place. So I'm just going to draw this on and hoping that pencil, which it's not, is going to show up. Let's go to the Hexagon one instead. There we go. I'm going to draw that on. I'm sure many of you have, like me. I've been paper piecing for years and years and years, and it still amazes me that I can learn new things all the time. The shortcuts, the time savers, new inspiration and ideas for using them. It's just fantastic. And in fact, my gorgeous friend and colleague Michelle Marvick taught me something last week on Facebook about paper piecing, and I've already given her a hard time about that, but it's a great tip I'll show you. Alright, so I've got my little stylized grevillea out here. So what Michelle taught me, she doesn't usually climb over the furniture, only when Kate and I are doing this, she knows. Okay, so you can see that I have cut this out with a really generous 1/4 inch seam, because what you have to remember is it's the paper that's going to give you your shape, so your seam allowance doesn't have to be that accurate. So what we're going to do, just to hold it in place, is one of two things. You can use just a little dab of glue if you wish. So you can glue stick, so you can have a fancy thin one like this. A lot of girls use these for folding over their seam allowance, but with this technique where we're doing the doily technique, that doesn't really work that well. But you can use this just as a little dab in the middle, and that will just stick it on and hold it in place so that you don't need to pin it. If you don't want to get fancy, a good old Boss stick, glue stick is going to do the same thing. If it's a water-based glue, it's perfectly fine. So you don't have to have the fancy ones, just a normal glue stick will do it. If you don't like gluing, and particularly if you're using paper pieces rather than a Perspex one, and I'll show you some of those later, you'll want a pin. So you want little pins. So these are my little applique pins in there. Good applique pins are an investment. They're about $12, $15 a box, but you look after them and then they will keep you in good stead, and keep them all together. Don't mix them up with your piecing pins. So what Michelle taught me, I would usually just pin on that side. But of course what happens is your thread gets caught on it all the time. So we're going to flip it and put our pin on the front. That is the simplest of things, and it has just made my life so much easier. So with that pinned on there, we're going to grab a needle. You really want, we're not editing her out today. She's staying in. She's just, okay, maybe not. Jen! Okay. Oh my goodness. Ginny, this is not a cat show. Excuse us for a minute, we'll get rid of the cat. Okay, minus the fluff ball. Let's get ourselves set up to tack on our fabric over our paper. Now, a bit of a toss up with needles. Piecing needles really good, but you can also find a lot of benefit from using an applique needle that's got a little bit of a bend in it, or a bit of give in it. So it's really going to be a personal preference thing. But if you are not going to be tacking your fabric through the paper, then you'll find there's less need to have a really strong needle like a piecing needle. So that's on that side, and we're just going to do the really cool way to tack on your fabric, which is not going through the paper, and you're just going to do a little back stitch over each of the folds. So I'm going to put my needle through like that, and then do another one over the same spot. So if I hold that up for you, you can see that it's held down that corner. And then we'll fold over the next one and do a little stitch through, and then over the same spot again. Now the beauty of doing these little back stitches is that you do not need to undo your tacking when you come to take the paper out. You're going to be able to pop the paper out. Now I'm going left to right or clockwise around my paper because I am left-handed. So if you find it's throwing you a little bit watching me, I do apologise on behalf of all left-handed quilters. You will be going anti-clockwise and you pop yours on. Okay, so we'll do the last one there. And there he is. So it didn't catch on my pin at all. Thank you, Michelle. And it's all tacked down on the other side. Now you can see these are sitting up just a little bit, and that's mostly because, of course, the fabric is all cut on the bias on these cuts around the angles of the pentagon. I find it's actually easier to whip stitch my pieces together if I haven't ironed them. So if I can, I will avoid ironing and I will whip stitch first while that fold on the corner is nice and soft, rather than when it's been hit with the iron and a bit of starch. So that is how I get, oh, wrong way up, my little pentagon there. So now you can see there's a lot of pentagons in this cushion, and I think there's close to 100 in here, but one goes in the middle and then you just keep adding them. And as you do and join them up, you will find you end up with these little diamonds in between, and it's great fun. It just adds a whole nother element to paper piecing. Think about this as well, and today's show for me is really relaxing, but I'll stress afterwards because I'm going to create so many work in progresses I need to finish to show you in the leftover shows. But have a think as well about using those ombre fabrics that we've looked at before, because you imagine doing paper piecing with holes in between and running a different coloured ombre underneath that you're going to applique your paper doily onto. You could get some absolutely stunning results, so keep that in mind. And also, I've got one whole piece of fabric underneath here, but you could have a paste background underneath as well, all different shades of creams out of your stash or something, and that would again create a different look. All right, so that's pentagons. So what about we upsize it again, and this time we'll go up to 8 sides, which are octagons, of course. And I've got a couple of different examples to show you. We'll just move all these out of the way. Octagons were probably the first one that I did. No, it was the first one I did on my first quilt. Oh my goodness, you guys haven't seen my first quilt yet, have you? Oh, I'll have to show you eventually. I will drag it out and show you. But my first and only patchwork teacher, because I've only done really one class, included octagons in our first sampler. And they were great because, again, you get this little lattice work effect because you get little squares, gaps in between. So this is probably the best example to show you. This is on the bottom of one of my geisha quilts. So you can see here, I've got lots and lots of little octagons, and they have got their little squares in between. So what I have done with this quilt is I've taken the feature fabric that I have used for my geisha, which is hiding under here. I'll just find her, just a little bit of her as a sneak peek. I've taken this feature fabric I've used for her gown, and I've cut the rest up and made all of the octagons out of it. And the great thing about octagons are as well, you don't need to cut your fabric shape down into an octagon. You can simply work with squares. So these are, I've just lost them, here they are. These are some that I have done, and I'm remaking my geisha at the moment. She's going to be called Madam Butterfly this time because I'm using a butterfly fabric. But you can see here, here's a heap more, and I'm actually going to create a little inner border with these octagons as a little lattice work around my geisha panel. So that's all happening as well. They get worked on, well, not this year, because they usually get worked on a plane. That's my plane project. So I'm going to have to find another time to do those. I've got some larger ones here though I want to show you. So this is me having fun with my Summer Palace fabric, and I'm actually creating a bag. Now you can see here I've got my octagons and they're kind of all together. I'm just arranging them at the moment, so see those? So these are larger than the ones that are on my geisha quilt, obviously. So I love them, and I'm just sitting them onto a marbled black background. So this is going to be a project for a new story for our Creative Cuts packs. Oh, that wasn't meant to happen, was it? There you go. So I'll just hold that up and show you. See those? And I'm piecing them and putting them onto a panel in between other strips of the matching fabrics. So all the fabrics are being used in a bag, and then I've chopped up some of them to make the octagons as well. So this project is also a good one to show you because I'm not using paper this time. I'm using these really, really cool Perspex ones. So these ones have been done with paper. I'm now moving on and using these, and these are, I'm going to put my hand against them so you can see them. These are a Perspex plastic, there you go, plastic octagon. And these are fantastic because I can hit them with an iron, I can glue them on if I want to, and they'll just pull off. And if there's too much glue residue on them, I can just wash it away. And they've got little slits down through the middle with a hole, so they're really nice and flexible. And also I can just pop a pen or something in there and pop them out when I've finished all of my piecing. Once you get up to larger sizes like this one, then also it's great because, what's this one? This one's 2 inches finished. The larger your paper pieces get, it creates a little bit more strain on your hands when you're moving and manipulating them to whip stitch them together. So this just is a really nice alternative if you love doing a lot of paper piecing. So the first one I'm doing is in this black and gold, but the second one is going to be in Lake House, so in Summer Palace, with a little bit of mint under the Australian sun in there. So you can see all of these colours here in the plums and the mint greens. So I'll make another bag up. Oh, there's a cream in there as well. Bit of cream Melba, bit of a mix match. But what I have done is just cut 2.5 inch squares, and these just need to be tacked on around these Perspex templates, because I don't need to chop off these little corners. They will just tuck over perfectly on their own. So I'm just going to pop one of these on, and then we can have a look at the next idea. Okay, we've got two of our octagons ready now. So I thought we'd just have a quick run through whip stitching them together. Again, if you've done a lot of paper piecing, you'll be able to do this without even thinking of it. So I've got these two ready to go, right sides together. Now one good little trick, if you haven't thought about it before, is to knot your thread and then run it up underneath the seam allowance up onto a point, and then it is concealed underneath, particularly if you're going to have a go at doing this kind of paper doily open style paper piecing, because it means that you won't have to finish off after every side, because when you're doing hexagons, because all of the sides meet, you can just keep going. But of course with these there's going to be little gaps. So what will happen here is I'll sew straight across to this corner, and then they'll open out like that, okay? And then you'll be able to run your cotton, your thread, underneath up to the next point where the next octagon is going to join on, and keep going. So if you start off by popping that thread up and underneath your seam allowance, then you'll be able to keep sewing even though you've got sides that aren't sewn and there's gaps in between. So I hope that's just a little idea for you. If you're after octagon shapes, well, you can buy a lot of English paper piecing octagons, whether it be the plastic ones or paper ones. And also create your own. Have a look on the internet, just have a little bit of a search on octagon shapes, and I'm sure you'll find some that you can use. So that's the technique for octagons. Now they're also great for, I find, for a lot of geometric designs. So I suppose like these ones on here, like these wicker designs that I've done, I find the octagons work really well. And the other thing too I'm going to mention just now, if you love using the wash away paper piecing papers, like the ones that Helen Stubbings has from Love and Hugs, They're fantastic for hexagons and I love those, and you can glue the edges over. But what you're going to find if you switch over and do some of this type of technique where all of your sides don't meet, then perhaps you're going to need something that's a little bit firmer, like a firmer cardboard or the paper, because you need to be really, really careful to keep your points nice and sharp. And that's a bit hard to do if the paper is too soft. So every different technique requires different things, and different papers and different templates are going to give you different results. So just keep that in mind if you do have a go at this technique. Now, moving on, we're going to do something really way out there now. We're going to have a look at how do you create a free form mosaic paper piece project or cushion. I think mine's going to be a cushion. So I'm going to pull down my graph paper. So you'll see here I have collected from our studio a collection of different batiks, and I thought these would be nice to work with today. So you can see I've got a few different coloured greens here. I've also got a really deep blue, and as a bit of a hint, this is going to be my water. And then I've got this lovely taupey one that sort of reflects all of the colours that I've got going on in the greens and the water, and that's going to form a base underneath, almost like a riverbank. So what we're going to do is grab my big ruler, move these out of the way, and I've got here some 15-inch graph paper. Now you don't need to use this. This is just really handy for me because I want to create a nice small cushion with this design, or it might end up on a bag. So this is big enough for what I'm doing, but you could use any type of paper. Just make sure it's a firm one, because what I'm hoping we can do is draw this up, and then this is going to become my paper that I pre-shape my pieces with. Okay, so if this is the size of my cushion, did you used to do this in, I think we did it in primary school or in high school. We used to just draw all of these random lines and shapes, and then we had a fantastic time going back and doodling and filling them in with all different patterns and colours and pencils and things. Well, I did, but this is the same principle. So what I'm going to do is just really roughly start to draw up a whole heap of lines across my paper. Again, they don't have to line up with any of my grid. As I said, this was just something that was convenient for me to use. You can do it in a pen, you can do it with a pencil. Probably one thing I'm going to avoid though is I'm not going to have any lines that are perfectly vertical or horizontal, because I want them to all kind of create a mosaic effect. And if you're a Melbourne person, think about the National Gallery and the glass ceiling in the main hall. It's all fractured glass. Federation Square in Melbourne has the same architectural details on the outside of the buildings. And as I'm going, I'm keeping in mind not to let any of my triangles get too small. So you can see what I'm doing there. There's all different lines coming up. I'll hold that up for you and see if you can see that. So there's all different triangles being formed in different shapes. Now what would happen if one of the triangles did end up too small to paper piece? Well, that's easy. That means that that one will become a gap that we will leave open. So I'm going to finish drawing this up, and then it's probably time we hit the kitchen and start getting a few things ready in there for lunch as well. Right, sorry, I went and put a black t-shirt on because I forgot to bring my aprons home from work, and I don't want to get barbecue sauce all over my gold top. Okay, today's recipe is quick, it's easy, it's healthy as well, so hopefully you'll like it. It is a pickled cucumber ginger salad, So it's really, really quick and easy to do. And also we're going to just do some barbecued pork to go on the side. I call it my magic salad because it has 3 natural diuretic ingredients in it. So as it warms up, this one is a lovely one to make up when you feel you need a little bit of a health kick. So cucumber, cider vinegar and ginger are all going to do those things for you. All right, so what I need to do is first of all soak my cucumber. So I've got some cucumber here, which is a continental one. So this one you can leave the skin on if you wish to. It's really nice for the colour. So I just want you to slice it really, really thin, really, really thin. Pop it into a bowl and let it soak for at least an hour. You can go overnight if you want to, and the salt's, of course, we're going to add salt to it, and of course that's going to draw all of the moisture out. So you pop it into a bowl like this, 1 or 2 cucumbers, whichever you like, and then good amount of salt, maybe about a tablespoon all over the top. Give it a really good mix, and you can see this one's been done for a little while and it's already got the moisture coming off it. So I'm going to pop a little bit more in here. My salt's already in there, girls, so I'm going to give it a good toss, and then we're going to set that aside in the fridge and let the moisture all come out of the cucumber and then drain it off. Okay, so I'll pop that in the fridge and come back. Cat. Now, what we're going to serve it with today is some pork. Now, I know pork fillet's a little bit on the pricey side, but it is lean and it is healthy. Now, this piece here I have had soaking overnight in a char siu sauce, but it's really up to you. It doesn't really matter. I just want it really nicely marinated. So you can buy one of these sauces that's already on the supermarket shelf. I used a nice generous heaped tablespoon and I cut it down with some rice vinegar, but any vinegar will do, just to thin it out a little bit. And one thing I learned ages and ages ago from a chef mate was, when you are making a marinade up, make sure you mix it all in the bottom of the container first and then put the meat on top so it's easier to coat. And the same trick he taught me for a salad. If you're adding a thick dressing, instead of putting all the salad in the bowl and then adding the dressing and trying to get it to mix, you actually put all of the dressing in the bowl first and smear it up over all of the sides and the edges of the bowl, and then put the salad in and mix it, and it's heaps better, and you get a really nice even coverage of the dressing or the marinade on your ingredients. So as you can see, overnight in this, if you don't want to go for the fancy sauce, which you can just buy at the supermarket, you could go with maybe 1/4 cup of honey and 1/4 cup of soy, and you could add some ginger in as well if you wanted to, if you want to make your own marinade. So anything like that's going to work. One trick that we're going to do today though, we're going to roast this, but we're going to just sear it off in the pan first, so that I look fancy to you. I've used peanut oil, but you could just use vegetable oil. Probably not sesame oil, because it's going to be in there long enough it will start to burn. And probably the only one I wouldn't use is olive oil, because you don't really want any of an olive flavour coming through for your kind of Asian cooking. So I'm going to heat the pan up, we're going to sear it, and then we're going to pop it in the oven. Kate says I have to talk to you over here because it's too noisy on the other camera. I'm just searing this pork, and I'll bring it over and show you. Okay, it's ready. So it's all nicely seared off and black. I'm going to pop it onto a baking tray now on some foil, and then it's going to go into the oven. Right, I've popped the pork in the oven, and I'm going to keep the rest of this marinade. You girls know how to do this. So I'm going to keep it for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to brush this over the pork, give it a bit of a flip, and then it will only take about 20 minutes because we've already sealed and cooked the outside of the pork. If you really love that traditional Chinese restaurant colour to pork and you want to pop it through a fried rice or something, you can always cheat and add a little bit of red food dye colouring into your marinade as well. So I'll set that aside, and I'll go and grab the cucumber out of the fridge because that'll be ready. This recipe for the cucumber salad, which is essentially pickled cucumber with ginger. Originally it was set up so that you had to leave it overnight, and that was so really all the sugar would dissolve into the vinegar, and also the flavour of the ginger would infuse through everything. I don't have time for that. So what I've done is thought about how my grandmother taught me to make the mint sauce to go with the lamb, which was you used a little bit of boiled water with your sugar and to dissolve it, and then you popped vinegar in. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. So I've got a tablespoon and a half of sugar. I'm going to pop it into a bowl. And then I'm just going to put enough water in to cover the sugar, and then we're going to give it a good stir. And while we're doing that, we're going to add in some ginger. Now, you're either a big ginger fan or a little ginger fan. You have to be a ginger fan though. I'm a big ginger fan, so I'm going to add a lot, but you can add anything from a teaspoon to a tablespoon for a whole long continental cucumber. So it just depends on how spicy you want it to be. So if I pop that in at the same time that I'm dissolving my sugar down, then it's going to bring out all the flavour of the ginger at the same time. Okay, so there you go. And that's going to speed the process up so we can enjoy it today when the pork comes out of the oven. Now into this, once you've got your sugar dissolved, you're going to add half a cup, hey Jen, I'm going to add half a cup of vinegar, and I use apple cider vinegar. You can use malt vinegar, probably a clearer one rather than a dark one. Thank you Felicity for my new measuring cups. Flick took pity on me that I had $2 shop ones in the previous shows, so she sent me some of these cool Matreska doll ones, and I love them. Right, so we're going to add half a cup of that in there, and then give that a stir. We're going to drain the liquid off our soaked cucumber. If you don't want yours really salty, you don't want the flavour of the salt, you can give it a quick little wash and dry it out with some paper towel, but I'm quite happy to leave that in there. And then we're going to pour this yummy mix over the top. Now, cucumber today, but you could do celery as well if you wanted to. You could do a Spanish onion if you wanted to. It really is up to you. Oh, and Kate said watermelon. Ooh. Watermelon and cucumber together. That is a natural diuretic as well, so that would be perfect for us girls in the heat. Oh my goodness, it was humid and hot on the weekend. So my hair's done the humid hair thing, and everything hurt because it got really hot and humid quick. So I need to eat this today. Okay, so there it is, it's all mixed together. You can leave this in the fridge for quite a few days. So just think about it if you want to make it ahead of time for friends on the weekend. You can have this already Thursday, Friday. Marinate your pork. You can just cook it on the barbecue and pop it in the oven. Easy. Right, so I'm going to go back and check on the pork, and then we can plate everything up. Okay, so I have put my ginger pickled cucumber in a little bowl, and I'm going to serve mine up. So it's more like a tasting platter. And I think in our house, this would go really down really well on a Friday night with some steamed dumplings and maybe a little noodle salad on the side. You know that the crunchy noodle salad that you get off the packet of noodles with the cabbage and stuff? I think that would be a really nice thing to serve up as well. And of course, just some steamed rice would be lovely. I'll cut through that there. You can see it's nice and juicy. Now, pop a little dish of barbecue or char siu or soy on the side as well if you like. But what I might also do, just to look a little bit impressive, is grab a pastry brush that I was using for basting, and I will just grab some of the juices off the tray and pop those on over the top there. I've popped this on a board. It's not my good board that Michelle gave me. I promise. I used that before. It's just a little one that I've bought from IKEA or somewhere. But don't use a good pale coloured one if you've used food colouring, because it might go through into your board and be a bit hard to get off. Okay, and just to finish it off, remember these? Flashback to the 70s dinner party. So I've done my spring onion curl, and I'm just going to pop that in there. And there you go, all done, and that makes a really yummy light lunch or to serve up with other Asian foods over summer. So now we've done that, I think we might actually enjoy this, and then we'll head back to some more paper piecing. So much fun. Can you see that? I've got my whole little mosaic fragmented shapes all drawn up. So what I want to do now is create the effect of a pond, pretty much a pond. And to do that, we want our murky coloured water down the bottom, which is going to be this one here. And then all of my leaves and reeds are all sitting on a pond. So that's going to be my blue. I've only bought a little bit of the blue home today to show you, but what I'm going to do is use a whole square of the blue that we're going to overlay our paper pieced leaves and things onto. That cat has been sitting quietly at the end of the table while we have been prepping this, but now the camera's on. Can you go back that way? Thank you. Just that way. Thanks. So where I've got the green as the all over or the underneath piece that we overlay the doily onto on the cushion, this time we're going to have a whole mosaic made of the greens, and we're going to overlay them onto the blue. So the first thing I need to do with this design is work out where the gaps are going to be, and in those spots or those little fragments of my mosaic we won't be doing any paper piecing. So I'm going to go through with my pencil and colour in the areas just like that, so I know that I don't need to do a paper pieced little segment 4. So these are going to definitely be all of the parts that are too small to piece. I did go through and add some extra ones in, some extra lines, so I didn't do them all from one side to the other of the square. As it got more complicated, I broke it down into different sections. So yeah, there's no way, I am not paper piecing that. That's just way too skinny. That's not happening. And either is that. So you'll go through and find little areas that you'll go, oh no, that's not going to be a paper pieced bit. But also think about keeping a nice even amount of gaps happening in between. Maybe a couple out on the edge as well. Yeah, that's not happening, but there's going to be one whole bit there. So you can see that I'm starting to form up where the water, if you like, is going to show through. And you know, not just the small ones, I might add in some really big areas like that, so I can get a true sense of the water showing through the leaves and the reeds. If you need to add a few more lines in as you go, there are no rules here, just add them in. In fact, I can see one big one up here that I want to add a little bit more water in. This is just a lovely, relaxing thing to do because there are no rules and you can have a play, and if you don't like what you've done, you can just redraw it. In fact, I can see the need to add some more lines in. As you do this, if you want to be a bit cheeky, you could start purposely drawing lines in to get particular styles of leaves happening, and maybe the odd dragonfly wing or two wouldn't go astray. You can do as many different things as you like. Okay, I think I'm nearly there. So that's where all my blue's going to show through, and because this is paper pieced, there's no reason why this has to be the edge of my cushion. I could actually get the whole thing paper pieced a bit like my doily and just overlay it so the blue shows all around the outside. Again, an ombre would be fantastic for the background on this project. So once you've got the places marked where your background is going to show through from underneath, then you've got the enviable task of numbering every single piece, because that's what you're going to need to do. So I want you to number them all. And then you need to take a photo of it with your phone so you don't lose where all the pieces go. If you've got access to a photocopier, perhaps take a copy of it as well so you've got it. And then you can have fun building up your mosaic with all of your different colours that you've got. So for me with these ones, I'm going to be working from dark to light, from the bottom up to the top. I'll put some of this murky tan colour down towards the bottom, and then I'm going to go from dark to light with the greens. So I hope you have a go at this. We obviously don't have time to cover it all today, but this is going to be my biggest leftover show project to date. Once they're all numbered, of course, and I've got a copy of it, then I'm going to sit down and cut them all out. I'll put them into groups that will match up with the fabrics I want to use, and this is going to be a really fun thing to do next weekend. Right, so the last thing I wanted to show you today was actually some paper piecing where we don't join them all together, but they are based on octagons again. And I just came up with this idea on the weekend when I was planning today's show, and I've got the shapes ready to go. So I thought, why don't we turn our paper piecing into a bit of a fruit salad? So I've drawn up these little templates like these, and this one here, which is an octagon, is going to be my apple, and then I used the base sides of the octagon and then lengthened them to the top to make my pear. And then you can see here I've got some little leaves as well, so based on the thickness of the leaf that I want, I can change that around. Now if you haven't done curves before with pre-shaping onto paper, well, we'll be covering that really soon. So what I have done this time is I have cut my shapes out of freezer paper, and I wanted to cover this off as well because freezer paper, particularly this thick one, is really good to use for paper piecing, particularly again with larger shapes because they've got a little bit more give in them, so they're easier on your hands. And what I'm going to do is make some apples and pears with these fabrics here. So I've also got this beautiful woven flecky fabric from Japan. I'm going to put them on, and I'm going to make just a really nice little table runner to pop on my kitchen table with a nice bowl of apples and pears. So just think about using your freezer paper again. You might even want to use it for the mosaic technique that we're looking at doing with all of the leaves on the pond, because again it just means that they're already drawn onto your freezer paper and you can cut them out. Now remember, if you're using freezer paper too, that you're going to need to use a dry iron to adhere it onto the wrong side of your fabric. A steam iron is going to lift it. So dry to stick it on, and then when it's all tacked on and you've got the shape you want, then hit it with a steam iron to set the folds ready for applique, and also it will lift the freezer paper off. So I'm just going to piece one of these pears now so we can see how it looks, and then I'll bring it back and show you later when the table runner is finished. Okay, if you're feeling a little bit crooked, okay, it's just when I've realised the camera was a bit askew. So we're sorry about that. It was all nice and straight now. I have paper piece tacked, if you like, my pear, and that's looking really cool. So I'm going to get these done really quick. One thing I forgot to mention, if you're doing larger shapes like this and you're using freezer paper, you will need to tack through the paper. You can glue over, but if you are not a glue girl, which I'm not, then you'll need to tack through the paper. So now that that's ready, I'm going to give that a really good steam iron, maybe a bit of starch as well, and then I can take out my tacking stitches on the back and take the paper out, and I will then put it straight down onto my fabric and sew it on. Don't take your paper out until you're absolutely ready to start appliquing on your shapes, or those little edges from the seam allowances do start to kick out a little bit. Anyway, that's all done. I hope you've got some ideas from today's show. Lots and lots of whips, work in progresses, UFOs, unfinished objects now for me to make up, but that will keep me in good stead for a few more leftover shows leading up to Christmas. Now, we have reached just over, when we filmed this show, 200 subscribers. So thank you so much for subscribing, those that have. And if you haven't yet, please do subscribe, because we're now at a point we will start doing special offers for our subscribers for the Craft and Cook show. If you do wish to know when the next shows have gone up as well, remember to click that little notification bell as well. And we'd really appreciate it if you've enjoyed today's show, if you press that little like button as well, because that helps us get the word out about our little show. So thanks very much for joining us. I really hope you enjoyed today's recipe as well, and that will put you in good stead for summer ahead with some yummy healthy eating. And I look forward to seeing you for next week's leftover show. Thanks so much, folks. Catch you next time. Bye.